Hi, Mike. How you doing? Congratulations on the move.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First one is, was there anything going on with the American Athletic Conference in terms of Army having to convince them to take Army, or was it the other way around? Who wanted who more, or was it equal?
Um, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, I said this to one of the advisors who was helping it. I said, this is kind of a weird negotiation in that neither side was like overly passionately, desperately wanting this to happen. I think the American clearly wanted Army. If they were going to go to 14, Army was their clear choice. But I think they also knew, hey, there's a lot of options for the 14th team. And then, on our side, we kind of thought, well, you know what? We're happy being independent, and we're not like in desperation of having to join a conference. So it actually made it I guess, less stressful negotiation, in that it was just like, hey, we'll explore it. And if you can make it make sense for us, then let's talk. And he kind of, Commissioner Oresco was very similar in that he said, hey, our membership's very interested in you, but it's got to make sense for us as well. So it was very interesting. It certainly was initiated by them. But Seth, after the 2019 season, the 2020 season, the 2021 season, historically, I always try to make sure I've reached out to Group of Five conference commissioners. I reach out to other athletic directors. It's part of our job is to make sure we've got a network of people and organizations that we can go to in case there's ever a need. I've been talking to Group of Five commissioners for at least the past 2 years about college football playoff distributions, because we were trying, the UMass, UConn, and myself, we were all trying to position ourselves as independents to maybe convince them to shuffle how they distribute their finances. So I've had conversations with Mike Oresco before Army was being considered for joining the league, and then of course it worked out that we took it all the way to the end of the exploration this time.
Okay, thank you. My follow-up question is that, of course, Army was in Conference USA 20 years ago, or whatever it was. I think it ended about 20 years ago, and the experience was not great. I was around for that. Is there any concern? There's a lot of Army fans who are concerned that this is a return to a Conference USA situation. Is there any concern with you, with the AAU, the AAC? And how do you address that to these Army fans who are concerned?
Absolutely, there's concern, right? I mean, I hear and read the same things that you hear and read. What I believe in my heart, and obviously I made the decision, so clearly I'm willing to put my own personal stake in it, is this program is in a completely different place than it was in 1997. Jeff Monken has us competitive in every aspect of college football, in recruiting, our strength facilities, our locker room facilities, our nutrition commitment, all of those things that are in place. When you look at the teams that are currently competing in the American, from Alabama, Birmingham, to Rice, to UNC Charlotte, to Memphis and South Florida, we are not at a disadvantage. I will say 2 years ago, when that league had Houston, Cincinnati, and Central Florida, and SMU, and their athletic budgets were not balanced with the rest of that league. The other thing that I'll point to, Seth, is in 1998, there was no transfer portal. There was no name, image, and likeness. There was no college football. There was no college football distribution. And all of those things have impacted how we operate athletics departments. And honestly, at the core of this decision, I sat down with 19 of our football players who are on Jeff Monken's leadership council. I sat down with Jeff Monken, and we had a candid conversation. And to a man, they wanted an opportunity to earn all conference accolades. They wanted to win a conference championship. And they wanted to have, when they have a year like we did in 2018, where we win 11-2, as independents, there's no true path to the college football playoff. And I know that we're 2-5 right now, and I know talking about a college football playoff might seem strange, but kids who play football for the United States Military Academy want to play for the best possible outcomes that they can. And going 11-2 in the American and playing for a championship, starting in 2024, likely puts you as one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff. And our kids believe that that can happen. And Jeff Monken believes that can happen. And I believe that can happen. And so, absolutely, only time will tell. I don't believe this is going to be Conference USA Part 2. But I certainly share your concern, and I understand why those of you who may have been around in that era. What we don't know is, had Army remained an independent from 98 to 2004, would their record be any different than it was as members of Conference USA? No way to know, no way to assign blame or credit, but I'm committed and convicted that this was the right time, and we're in a position now that's going to set us up for success.
Next up will be Joe Iacano from Black Knight Nation. GoBlackKnights.com. Sorry, Joe.
No problem. Hey, Mike, congratulations on joining the AAC and the whole decision that went along with it. Mike, we've only heard kind of bits and pieces of the financials that are attached to the decision. The one figure that keeps getting tossed around is the $35 million to get out of the current scheduling obligations. Kind of a two-part question around that. One, is that an accurate figure, or can you kind of deep dive a little bit more around that figure and what the kind of how that actually works so folks can understand it a little better? And B, can you discuss some of the updates financially of joining the AAC that'll help give Army Athletics a good ROI on this decision?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Appreciate the question. So I'll start with the specifics, and sadly, I'm not going to go into specifics, but I'll say this. We have an instant significant increase in finances on day one. By 2032, we'll be a full member of the American Athletic Conference, which will be considerably impactful, not just to the football program, but to all 30 of our sports. Right now, our revenue increases year over year are pacing about 2 or 3%, and expenses are closer to 10 to 12%. Airplane flights, gas, all the things that you guys have to pay for personally, we have to do that for 1,100 cadet athletes. So revenue is part of it. It was not the driving force. And then, in terms of the future game schedule, Joe, so that number that you've heard, and the $35 million number, we're going to have to cancel or move about 75 to 80 future scheduled games. We've already canceled about 40 of them with no penalty. If every one of them said, screw you guys, we have a contract, we are holding you to it, it would have been 35 million. Liberty, BYU, New Mexico State, all within the last 3 or 4 years did this. None of them ended up being on the hook for more than $450,000 total. So the $35 million was the, oh crap, worst case scenario. And we've already eliminated close to half of that. And I literally haven't had time to return calls today. So, and we've done that for other schools as well. That in 2024 and 2025 are the 2 years that we're concerned, just from an ethical, partnership type of conversation. It's hard to pull the rug out from under people 11 months before the game. We've had it done to us. We had to replace Tennessee with an FCS school. We had to replace Ball State with an FCS school. And those are difficult. And those might be the ones that we're going to have to pay the cancellation fees. But it's not going to be $35 million. It shouldn't be $1 million, to be honest with you. And the American Athletic Conference has agreed to help us with some of those expenses. So that big number is scary. It should be, but it's not realistic. And we feel like we'll get that wrapped up pretty quickly.
Great. Thanks for shedding light on that, Mike. And my follow-up and final question is, with your 8 in-conference games and then the 2 CIC games, which we all know the Navy game's not going to be counted as a conference game, that leaves 2 games open on the schedule. Is the model for that going to kind of be an FCS or a G5? You need some water? No problem. Happens to me all the time.
That's what happens when we do these Zoom calls. They didn't have a water next to them, like at a normal press conference.
All right. Good stuff. So back to the scheduling thing, Mike. So with 8 AAC games, it kind of, and the 2 academy games, it leaves 2 other games open on the schedule. Is the kind of model schedule going to be like an FCS or another group of 5 and a big time Power 5 team, or has that kind of not been decided yet? Is it open for discussion every year? Do you have a model around those 2 games?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, Joe, we'd like to keep one FCS opponent and then a Power 5 opponent. It may not work out every year. Coach Munkin and I are certainly having those conversations. We're looking at our specific calendars. Again, these first couple of years, we may have to be less flexible because of the American scheduling and where they can fit us in. As you pointed out, we've blocked off that first Saturday in November. That's untouchable. That's going to be Air Force. We've eliminated Navy, who's in the conference, but we'll never play them as a regular season conference opponent. So we're probably going to have to play some conference games earlier in the season than some of the other schools. But that was kind of acceptable to us. But in a perfect world, yeah, we'd like to have that big Power 5, maybe not LSU. But the Michigans, the Wisconsins, those types of programs that we played historically. And then an FCS. We've played, I think I should probably have researched this, so Eric will be mad at me, but I think we played more Power 5 opponents this month than Air Force has in 4 or 5 years. And who's everybody talking about right now? Air Force. Because A, they're really good, but B, they're undefeated. And fewer people look into who you've played. They just look at your record. And so we're trying to balance that. We think that there's some goodness. We want to play Power 5 teams, but asking these guys to play 3 and 4 weeks, that's a big ask. So, yep. But that's the goal.
Thanks, Mike.
Jeff from ENVE Magazine.
Thanks, Eric. Mr. Buddie, thank you for joining us today. Congratulations on the new conference entry. My question to you, to kind of build off of that, I wanted to talk about the Navy game a little bit. How respectful was the AAC of your wishes to kind of keep the Army-Navy game its own separate thing? And how interesting will it be to have the possibility of consecutive Army-Navy games if, knock on wood, there is a conference title between the two?
Well, I will say this, Mike Oresco completely gets it. I never had to bring up Air Force or Navy. And certainly with Navy already being a conference member, I think in their 10th year now, Chuck Gladchuck, to his credit, was incredibly candid with me. He was transparent with the league. We were 100% on the same sheet of music that Army-Navy is a separate neutral site game, and we should never play on a random Saturday or Friday night in October or November. So I didn't even have to broach that topic. Commissioner Oresco knew from the get-go that the Commander-in-Chief Trophy is incredibly important to us. I think it would be awesome to play Army-Navy the first weekend of December for the American Conference Championship, because it means that academy football is alive and well. That's important to our country, obviously, from my seat. It also means, 8 of the last 10 years, the winner of that football game plays in a New Year's Six bowl game. And starting next year, it's likely to be playing in a college football playoff game. So, does it water down the standalone Army-Navy game? Possibly, but, Georgia and Alabama played each other the last week of the season. They played each other again a week later for the championship. They sold 110,000 tickets to both games. I'm not comparing us to Georgia, Alabama when it comes to fan support, but I'll say this: it would be less than ideal to have to play them twice in a row because of how physical it is, but it would be an awesome problem to have, because it means one of us, and certainly our goal is to beat Navy and everything, and it would be our expectation that we win that championship. We get a chance to play in a New Year's Day 6 game, which has all kinds of phenomenal positive repercussions. So let's hope that we have to have that problem.
Absolutely. And final one from me, mentioned in the press release that CBS Sports will continue to be the exclusive home of Army for home games through 2028. How is CBS in the negotiations? I understand they have some sort of AAC rights, but how is CBS in the whole handling of this situation?
Wonderful. Dan Weinberg at CBS has been my contact. He has stood through us during a pandemic and an economic crisis and pandemic, football where we couldn't have fans in the game. And CBS has been a great partner. And we signed an agreement with them that they would have our home games through 2028. And our intention, like most things with West Point and the United States Military Academy, is to honor those commitments. And so we're excited that they gave us the opportunity to take our existing deal into that league. We're very appreciative that the league allowed us to have that model. When we play on the road at an American school, we'll be on ESPN on their platform. But it was important to us that we honored a commitment that we made to CBS, who's been a really good and true partner for us.
Appreciate your time and insight. Congratulations.
Thanks, Jeff.
Joe from Underdog Dynasty.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a second to find the unmute button. But Mike, for those that aren't as familiar with the Army-Navy rivalry, including myself, why was it so important to keep that game a non-conference matchup specifically?
Well, we call it America's game because we hope that it transcends college football. You're going to watch 170 young men who don't get paid name, image, and likeness. We don't raid the transfer portal to strengthen our rosters. We both do it by recruiting young men who want to serve their country, who want to be officers in the military, who are committed to serving and defending the Constitution for 5 years upon graduation. And so it's different. And I had never been to the game before I took this job, Joe. So it was kind of I've learned on the fly as well, but it's just a special thing. And so again, Commissioner Oresco, who ironically used to work for CBS on the Army-Navy property, completely grasped that the uniqueness of that. And it's less about never having it be a conference game, but it's always going to be on that date, the second Saturday in December. And in fairness to the other 12 schools in the American, we can't ask them to wait for us to play that game and name a champion, because the regular season will have completed, the championship game will be completed. And so it just made more sense to completely carve it out. We'll play 8 other teams every year. Navy will play 8 other teams, and we'll just play each other in that war that we have every December, and continue to protect it and have all eyes of the country on those young men who are doing their best to represent their country honorably.
Gotcha. That completely makes sense. You mentioned the players that were part of Coach Monken's leadership council that you discussed this decision with. Can you go into a little more detail about, just some of the other things that were discussed, other than, the benefits of of all conference honors and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it was really actually, it was pretty cool to get to do it. News had kind of broken, right? I mean, you all in the media do a wonderful job, and, some of the national, the Pete Thamels in the world had kind of broken the news that, hey, American has targeted Army. And I know our kids have cell phones, right? So it's easy for dudes like me who wear a coat and tie and, have gray hair and, sit up here in our fancy mahogany offices to make these decisions. And to me, that's kind of BS, right? Because I'm not running into 290-pound offensive linemen, and I'm not blocking people, and I'm not getting concussions and breaking my bones. And I just said, hey, I'm going to talk to the guys who are actually going to have to cash the check that we theoretically might be writing. And coach, it's 4 or 5 kids from the freshman class, 4 or 5 more from the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors. And they walked in, and I said, hey, here's the situation. Here's what's been offered. Here's what that means for you. I took our scheduled games for the next 5 years, and then I created a fake schedule for the next 5 years and just plugged in 8 American Athletic Conference opponents. And I passed them out, and I said, hey, look at the schedules on the top row and look at the schedules on the bottom row. That's the difference in what we're talking about. I let them kind of digest it for 10 minutes, and they said, Mr. Buddie, what are we missing? If we get to play this other schedule, and we win, we get to play for conference championship, and we get to go to like 9 different potential bowl games instead of the 2 that we currently have. And they just asked a bunch of good questions. They asked Coach Monken, what will this do to recruiting? What kind of impact will this have on our travel? Will this have us miss more class or miss less class? It just very mature, thoughtful approach that they had. And after about 30 minutes, they said, they looked at each other and said, does anybody think this is not a no-brainer? And they all said, if you can make it happen, Mr. Buddie, we'd love to get the opportunity. And that certainly helped. We still had a lot of due diligence to do. We still had a lot of legal hurdles, but having those young men who are going to be making the plays on the field, to have them unanimously in support of it, and Coach Monken supporting it, made it a lot easier to get the yes.
Gotcha. Appreciate the insight. Congratulations on the mahogany desk, by the way. That's a big one. Last question for you. You mentioned, I think you said Army plans on being a full AAC member by 2032. Is that correct? And that includes all sports at that point?
No, I'm sorry. We're just a full participant in their revenue distribution. So they've got a buy-in that we'll be doing over the next 5 years. And then, of course, once our CBS contract either expires, if we don't renew it, we would be on the ESPN platform and become on equal footing with all 13 members by 2032. So we're stair-stepping into the league from a financial standpoint. It will always just be football only. Our sports have a great home in the Patriot League and some of our affiliate conferences that are really good fits that we don't want to mess with that.
Gotcha. I appreciate the clarification. That's all I had.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We have time for about 2 more. Matt from Herb FM Sports.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Hey, Mike, just want to ask you a quick question. So in what ways will Army go ahead and strengthen the American Athletic Conference?
Well, we hope to bring a new fan base, right? What I love about the American is they've got 5 institutions that are in top 25 media markets. And so our kids are going to get to go and play in Philadelphia and Tampa and Charlotte and, some of these very highly populated places, also very patriotic places. And so, we get to stay in Texas with 3 current schools, going to Alabama, Birmingham. And just like any places we go now, right? Louisiana Monroe had a phenomenal following of Army fans because of it's a very patriotic state, a lot of Army bases down there. So we think that we'll help sell tickets for our opposing teams. And then, we just want to bring a competitive brand of football. Our intention is not to go and finish in the top half. I mean, we want to be competitive. We want to compete for championships from day one. And so certainly some eyeballs from a local perspective. And then hopefully our success raises the entire profile of the league as well.
And to wrap us up, we'll wrap it up with Seth from Black Knight Nation. Go ahead, Seth.
Full circle.
Mike, thanks for the extra question. Eric, thanks for the extra question. I know you said that the schedule is being made and there's a lot of different things going on. Are there 2 teams that you are most interested in keeping or you have to keep for next year for the non-league schedule? I know you have Dartmouth, which is an FCS, and I don't know, is there another team?
Yeah, next year is going to be more based on date availability with the American. There's one game that we haven't announced yet that we're really trying to keep for a lot of reasons that'll be obvious if and when it gets announced, if we can make it work. But no, for us, we want to find a path for our kids to win as many games as possible, to protect that Air Force and Navy success that we've been having, to continue that. But I think it'll probably be a month or so before we know, Seth. But to answer your question, yeah, there's 2, and FCS, we've got both Lehigh and Dartmouth next year. We'd love to keep one of those 2, and then just a critical key Power 5 opponent too, if we can make it work. But it's going to be date dependent more than just our preference.
Thank you. Good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you all for being on. I know you got a lot going on. We appreciate you you covering our guys. They deserve it. And it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. If there's follow-ups, reach out to Eric. I'm happy to continue the conversation. But thanks for your time today, guys.